For this session, I wrote 223 words. For this session, I wrote 77 words. For this session, I wrote 79 words. I did a good bit of reworking my previous segments today. I haven't really talked about this, but on the days that I have a lower word count than usual, those are usually the days that I have made some pretty big edits in my work in progress. And I prefer this because I am trying to reduce the burden of editing down the road, and how this editing process goes for me is also in an intuitive manner where I will feel like something needs to be added or changed, and that's my clue to revisit a previous passage or segment and rework it. So it's really not cerebral for me. I'm not actively thinking to make these edits or changes. It's more an impression or a feeling that I'll have where it seems that something needs to be added or changed, and I make those changes accordingly to those impressions and feelings, and I don't strain myself with it either. So it's not something that I am like really over driving in my session. It's very much more natural.
It's a lot of pressure.
Oh, you did it.
That was terrible, terrible flip.
You did it.
Come back, come back.
There we go. Oh my gosh. Well, that is a little extra.
Wow.
Wow. A little extra caffeine boost, and for today's giant tarot, I pulled the Hierophant, which means I'll be reading from Brandon Sanderson, The Way of Kings, because I pulled the Hierophant for him. I am 52 pages in, so I'm gonna try to make more progress in this today. I am at 1,959 words for my second manuscript, my cozy magical novel. For this session, I wrote 142 words. Lately in my gateway meditations, I have been focusing on freshness, creating the energy of freshness, manifesting that in my life. And I had no idea how this was gonna play out, but where I'm noticing it play out is actually in my writing. I've been feeling really inspired and super creative in my writing sessions. Yesterday I had that surprise writing session for my second manuscript, and the way that the story moved, it just took me away. And today I sat for my primary manuscript, and I'm a panster, so I don't plan things in advance to make the story happen. I just find out as I sit to write. And the direction my story is taking, I was so pleasantly surprised. The twist was so unexpected, and I sat there being like, man, did I actually write this? It was great. This segment also wove together all of these intangible, psychological, spiritual, philosophical elements into one cohesive unit, and wow, I am so happy with my direction so far. I have been experimenting a lot this month with a new creative flow. While I do have my process in place for my primary manuscript, I'm still figuring out how to best incorporate my secondary manuscript, which is my magical novel, because I'm gaining a lot of momentum with that, and I'm so excited for it and I want to work on it more. With that said, making space for that requires me to rearrange some other things that I've got going on in my life, such as my reading. Yet reading is a substantial part of my creative process, so I don't want to take away too much from my reading, yet I want to make space for my new project that's growing. So I've been experimenting a lot this month. I'm starting to notice a bit of a pattern that in my upswing of my hormonal cycle and the moon cycle, I am reading a lot, and I can do a lot of heavy duty reading and heavy volume reading. However, I inevitably have a low phase, the nadir part of my cycle, and I have been experimenting in that. I'm noticing that I might not be able to read as much in my nadir phase, but I can write, and I'm noticing that when I do position my writing in that part of my cycle, I'm actually really in touch with my creativity at a completely different level than usual. Essentially, I feel like I'm more in touch with my subconscious, and my ideas come to life in a very fresh and new way. So I'm playing around with that, and next month, rather than having these very aggressive goals for reading, I'm thinking I'm gonna divide up my time differently, where during my zenith phase of my cycle, I'll focus on the reading, and then during the nadir phase of my cycle, I'll focus more on my writing. I still read something every single day, but that volume definitely waxes and wanes is what I've noticed. I do want to talk a little bit more about my second manuscript, my cozy magical novel. I figured out how to work around the challenge of having a story featuring a primarily introverted character. And this workaround is through a point of view shift that occurs naturally in the setting of my introverted character engaging with somebody else, and then following that secondary character into the next scene. This strategy allows me also to build the world of my magical world more naturally, instead of having large segmented bits where I'm building out the world and then having the characters then engage. It's a much more embedded way to achieve all of that. I've also figured out where I need to embed more context clues within dialogue. So with the little gestures that the characters might make, I'll use that as an anchor point to build out a little bit more of my world. I've also figured out how to make my dialogue sound more interesting and natural by padding it with thoughts that the character that I'm focusing on might have, so that then the dialogue bits that follow those thought forms just make much more sense, and they are able to carry more subtlety. So that's what I have for writing updates. Now for the last parts of this vlog, I wanted to share some tarot and some books. Lately, I have been focusing on my Fairy Wisdom Oracle cards, and for today I pulled the Flower Fairy. I've also brought out my crystal cards, and I pulled out the Moonstone for today. And then Giant Tarot as always, because this is my latest obsession, the Six of Pentacles. 4 books. I have some exciting new books that I'm receiving in the mail. I have one package, I believe, due today later, so I'll share that in future vlogs. But in my Goodwill haul of late. There's only 2 books this round, but I found Anne of Avonlea, a copy of this, and I found Maria Montessori, Her Life and Work. I am very interested in learning about Maria Montessori's mind and thoughts around education and learning. Fun fact, I did attend a Montessori program when I was very young, but then I was pulled out of that to go into regular school. And I do remember the shock that it was to my system to have to go to regular school. It was so traumatic. I remember that feeling. And regular school was not as great as Montessori. I've got to just put it out there. I have a passion against current education systems. I still think they're so far behind the times and that there's so much work to be done in them to really facilitate people toward purpose and creativity. A huge bit of that passion is what fueled my first book, It's Okay to Burn Bridges, which I'm doing a weekly series on, so stay tuned for the next vlog where I will be unpacking lesson number 2, which is, you don't have to be nice to everyone. This is going to be very, very interesting. That is it for this vlog, and I will see you in the next one.